Right here we have Applewood. Big, chunky Applewood. The neighbor gave me some of this off a dead limb off his apple tree. And we've been soaking it in water here for a day. Because those are big chunks of Applewood, you want that water to really penetrate, so best to leave it soaking for a good while. And that's what we're going to throw into the smoker once it gets up to temp. Alright, so the next step of the process here is we've got some chunky pieces of lake trout fillet here. Taking all the dark meat out. Has a strong flavor that a lot of people don't like, so I just take that out. And I like chunks about this size. And what you got to do next is salt them heavily. I use Morton canning salt. It doesn't have iodine in it. I don't know if iodine will hurt the process at all, but why even bother? It's just straight salt. So what I do is get a nice bowl like this, and then I heavily coat all the fish. I'm probably going to use the rest of this whole box here. Just like this. Get all that salt in there. And what I'm going to do is mix this up real good so every piece of fillet is just coated in salt. Salt's going to do a couple things. Probably the biggest job it's going to do is it's going to start drawing some of the moisture out of these fillets. That'll give it a little bit of a firmer texture when it's finally done smoking. The other thing it'll do is give it some flavor. That salt will infiltrate the meat and give it a nice salty flavor. So we're going to let this stand just like this at room temperature for about 45 minutes or so. You don't want to go any longer than that, otherwise it gets way too salty, even during the next step when you try to soak all the salt out of it. Very important to monitor the time. You don't want to go more than 45 minutes for pieces about this thick. If you're doing thinner pieces, I would recommend even less time, but it's not an exact science. So we're going to let that stand for about 45 minutes and then we'll see what it looks like. Alright, this fish has been sitting in the salt for about 45 minutes or so. As you can see, we're getting some water kind of leaching out of it. That's good. So the next step is to take all this and put it in the colander here and rinse it off one by one under some cold water. That'll get all the excess salt off, and you'll let it drip dry in here, and that'll prepare us for the next stage. Alright, well, we finally got all the fish drained of the salt, and we've also put some fresh water over it to get all that extra salt off, and put it in a strainer. So now we've got just basically salted fish. So what we do next here is we take this and we put it in a mixing bowl. I'm putting it back in the bowl that I had the salt in. Of course, I've washed the salt out. And kind of break it apart here. And then for my recipe, what I like to do is season it with, this is fresh ground pepper. I've got probably 2 tablespoons in here. Ground it myself. Can't really beat that flavor. So I just kind of sprinkle that all over. Oh yeah. And then what I do is I have some dark brown sugar. You can use regular brown sugar as well. It works just as well. I kind of like the molasses flavor a little bit, so that's why I go with the darker stuff. And then I'm going to take a whole bag, basically. Well, I'll do just shy of a bag because I think that's probably enough right there. About 1/3 of a bag left. Set that aside. And then what I'm going to do is kind of break up the sugar and work it into the fish. Fish has a lot of moisture in it. The sugar will help draw that out. So eventually this will mean this is going to create sort of a, almost like a marinade for the fish. It'll be pepper and a real sweet, almost kind of molasses-y, syrupy marinade for this. Try to make sure you're breaking up these little balls of sugar. Anything like that, break it all up. Just get it good and coated. You want every square inch of this fish to be coated in brown sugar and pepper. Oh yeah. So you can see how it's starting to get a little stickier already. It's kind of more like molasses. Got some chunks here. Break those up. Work them in. Gotta be careful not to use too much force or you'll put your fingers right through these pieces of fish. I'm try to keep them nice and whole. Alright, so that's a good syrupy mess. That's what you want right there. Almost like you dumped a bunch of molasses on there. Alright. Every square inch is nice and coated. Then what I do is I try to smush it all pretty flat, nice even level, so that the liquid will tend to coat everything as it settles. Just like that. Okay? And then what you're going to do is you're going to set this in the fridge overnight. And that'll bring us to the next step. Alright, it's been overnight now. The fish has been soaking in the marinade and the fish has absorbed a lot of sugar and that black pepper flavor. So now the next step here in the smoking process is to get the excess sugar off. So what we're going to do is put them in here and run cold water over each piece. We'll lose a little bit of the pepper. That's okay because we're going to add more in a bit, and the meat itself has already absorbed a good bit of pepper flavor, so not a huge loss. Yep, so we're going to clean that up and then show you the next step. Alright, so we've strained all those pieces, rinsed them off one by one, let them drip dry in the colander, and now what I've done is I've laid them all out on a tray here so we can get some air over them. I'm going to be air drying these for a while. But before I do that, we lost a little bit of pepper during the washing process, so I'm just going to apply some more fresh ground pepper here. Get it all stuck to the sticky sugars on there. If you're like me, the more the merrier. I like my smoked fish to have a little bit of a bite to it. Okay, so that's probably pretty good. Now what we're going to do, I've got a fan here, we're going to blow this fan on this for probably an hour at room temperature. And that's going to allow the fish to get dry on top and real sticky. And that's important because it helps the smoke stick to it. And also the pepper, when you're flipping these over, you want pepper to stay stuck to it. So we'll do that. Turn this fan on low. And then in about an hour we're going to flip all these pieces over and apply some more pepper to that side. And then we're going to run the fan over that side for about an hour or two. Alright, so we've got the pieces here. They've been drying underneath the fan. I didn't show you the flipping of the pieces, but I flipped them once and added more pepper on the back side here. Now they're nice and sticky. You can probably tell they look a little dry. And they're basically ready to go on the smoker. So we're going to fire up the smoker, and once that gets up to temperature, throw these bad boys on. Alright, we're out here. Time to fire up the old smoker. This is a Brinkman charcoal smoker. So we got some plain charcoal briquettes right here. Put a pile of them puppies in here. Look at this old bag. And then what we're going to do is drop them out down in the bottom of this. And get them in there. Alright. And then everyone's favorite, charcoal lighter fluid. And we get this nice and drenched down in here. Okay. I'm gonna lay it down on fire. Hope they don't die. There it goes. Oh yeah. So that's probably going to take 20 minutes to get up to temp. You want your coals to be nice and glowing. You don't want any flavors from the lighter fluid either, so you got to let all that burn off. So we're just going to put the lid on top of this and wait for it to get hot. Alright, so we got some nice white charcoal coals going here, so it's time to put the wood on. We got our wood. It's been soaking overnight in water. Big chunks of applewood. Just going to throw some of those straight on the coal. Get a good layering on there. Try to get most of the drip water off. You want to put out your coals. Pretty resilient, but there. Now we gotta wait a little bit, and that will start shooting up some real good smoke. Before we put the fish on, one other key thing to do is you have a bowl, metal bowl with some water in it that goes on the bottom. That's going to keep your fish moist as it smokes. You don't want it to get too dry, so just placing that in there. And while the applewood is starting to smoke up, that'll heat up and start steaming as well, and then it will be time to put the fish on. Alright, we've got some good smoke finally on here, so I think it's time to put the fish on. Oh yeah, look at that. So this one here is going to be the one that goes on the top, so I'll put that in second. Got the bigger, chunkier pieces I'm going to put on the bottom layer because they require longer to cook. And it gets to a higher temp down there. So put those on the bottom and then these on the top like that. And then we put the cover back on and we wait. Okay, so the fish has been in the smoker here for probably just under 3 hours. Let's take a look at it. Alright, it looks like it's done. You don't want to overcook it. You can get obviously a greater smoky flavor if you do cook it a little longer, but even just an hour is enough to give it a nice smoky flavor in my experience. So I'm trying to balance that flavor with, you know, not overcooking the fish. So I think we're at just about the right point here, so I'm going to take this off and we'll get a closer look at it in the house here. So here's what we ended up with from that batch. Whole pile of smoked lake trout. It's pretty delicious right now, but it's going to be even better once it's been refrigerated. It's kind of like a good chowder. It needs like a day in the fridge to mature. Next up, we're going to vacuum seal it. Last stage of the process is to vacuum seal your fish. Got some awesome cooked pieces here, nice and sticky. Oh, it smells so good. And now we're going to put several into our vacuum seal bags here. Try not to put too many in because, this is kind of like fudge. Super rich. You can only really eat so much at a time. So this bag here is going to be even a little bit of a bigger bag than what I normally do. This could be for like having a few people over or whatnot. But anyways, we got it in there nice in the vacuum seal bags. We put the thing in here. Hit the seal button and watch the magic happen. Sealing. Cat's trying to get in the cupboard, as usual. And there we go. We've got a nice vacuum seal bag here. No air bubbles in there at all, so this won't get freezer burn. You can keep it in the freezer for years if you want. Throw these in the freezer, pull one out when you're ready to eat it. No cooking necessary. It's all ready to go right on the crackers.